everyone, and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis, which is brought to you by LawSikho. Today, we have an editorial from the Indian Express discussing about the hate speech and as to how the law has actually interpreted this and how the courts have interpreted the hate speech. Next, we have the news updates, and thirdly, we have the legal news for the day. Let's start with an article. It says that the recent comments made by the spokesperson of BJP, Nupur Sharma and Naveen Jindal, have once again brought the provision of hate speech against religions to the limelight. Now, as we know that in India, many a times, the freedom of speech and expression, specifically if we talk about our political leaders, it is often taken as a kind of way to a liberation, and they do not understand that this also is a fundamental right that comes with reasonable restrictions. Forgetting the fact that we have reasonable restrictions, many a times people, and specifically when we talk about these political leaders, they tend to speak things or they tend to give such speech content that can be considered as a hate comment or a hate speech against a particular section of the society or any other religion of the society. Similar case has sprung up when recently the spokesperson of BJP, Nupur Sharma and Naveen Jindal, have said some unaccountable words, and definitely they are being now held accountable for the sections for hate speech. Let's understand that what is the provision for hate speech that we have available and what are the sources that we have. So section 295A of the Indian Penal Code defines and prescribes the punishment for deliberate and malicious acts against religious feelings. So here two things are important, that this should be malicious, and being malicious should be deliberate in nature. So that if I'm saying anything about a particular religion, a particular faith, a particular conscience, then I should be malicious in nature. That is, I should be saying something that is insulting or that is demeaning to that particular religion. And secondly, it should be deliberate in nature. By that I mean that I very much understand that what are the consequences of me being, or me saying that particular comment, or what actually is good or bad. But yet, if I choose to say that comment, it will be a part of hate speech under section 295A of the Indian Penal Code. So it says it is one of the key provisions to combat religious offense and instigations, because as we know, in India, the riots and all, they're all put forward, or they're all sparked up in the name of religion, mostly in the name of religion, and thus they work in the light of instigations. So what happens is that one person, one leader, or any one particular figure instigates the people from one particular community to think in a hatred manner against the people of the other community or any other religion. So the provision itself has been criticized as colonial on the grounds that Indians are considered to be easily inflammable on religious pretext. Now this, you must be understanding very clearly over here that after the revolt of 1857, the Britishers were shocked to see a kind of Hindu-Muslim unity amongst the people when the revolt was going on. So it was only after 1857 revolt that the British had come up hugely with the idea of divide and rule. And after that, they started understanding that India indeed is a diverse land, be it in the terms of community, caste, and specifically here, the major the broadest diversion was on the grounds of religion. And that is why they came up with such policies of instigation, some such things where they could divide the people on these grounds and then they could rule effortlessly. And that is why this, hate speech provision, it was also said that it is a colonial provision because it was actually brought by, the Britishers to combat this. But ultimately, in the truth, if we consider, it was actually their seed that they had sown on the Indian grounds. So the law is more apt for the communally charged activities back in 1920s. Let's see how has the judicial interpretation been with regards to the hate speech in India. So Rangila Rasool case was insufficient to be decided based on the grounds laid down under section 153A that also talks about this hatred, spreading enmity and hatred amongst the people. And hence the Lahore High Court urged the expansion of the provisions, so that it said that we need to be clearer when it comes to this provision, and any kind of ambiguity would cause difficulty in deciding such cases. Secondly, the Ramji Lal Modi case in 1957 is a landmark case where the Supreme Court held that the law was meant to preserve the public order, and it was indeed an important one. Then public order in itself, as we all know, is an exception to the fundamental right of free speech. Here is a small task for you. if you know that we have a right to freedom under Article 19, can you tell me that the reasonable restrictions, or the ones that we were talking about here, reasonable restrictions are available under which article of the Indian Constitution? If you know the answer, pause the video right now and let me know in the comment section below. Next, in the Baba Khali Ahmed case of 1960, the Supreme Court held that malicious intent can also be decided upon from outside sources. And then finally, in the Ramlal Puri case of 1973, it was held that it is important since Supreme Court for the first time distinguished between a common man and a hypersensitive man. Now, as generally, if you remember, when we used to study torts, so when we used to study, general nuisance or such things, there was a point when we used to distinguish between a common man and a hypersensitive man. So, for example, there is a common person with a common outlook towards the society. So there might be some things that might not be very sensitive for that person, but there are some people, if they are way too sensitive about a particular thing, and in this regard, they come in the category of hypersensitive man. And for the general usage of law, we always consider the common man's perspective and not the perspective of the hypersensitive man. So this is an important thing, because here in the Ramlal Puri case of 1973, it was for the first time that a distinguishment was made between common man and a hypersensitive man. With this, let's see what do we have for news updates today. Firstly, Justice Desai is new press council chief. So former Supreme Court Justice, now she's retired, Ranjana Desai, was appointed chairperson of the Press Council of India, the self-regulatory watchdog of print media. She replaces Justice C.K. Prasad, who vacated office in November 2021. Second, India test-fired capable Prithvi II missile. So India successfully test-fired the short-range nuclear-capable ballistic missile Prithvi II from an integrated test center in Odisha. This comes days after conducting a routine test of its nuclear-capable Agni missile. Thirdly, Surat to be the first city in the country to get processed steel slag road. Please note, this is a very important piece of information. So Surat has become the first country in the world, first country in India, to have a steel slag road. So Steel Minister Ramchandra Prasad Singh inaugurated a 6-lane highway in Surat made up of steel slag, which is a first of the country. Please consider steel slag basically is one of the byproducts which are, which we get after the processing of steel. So the road constructed using 100% steel processed slag is a real example of converting waste into wealth and improving sustainability of steel plants, the minister said, and this definitely will help us in the recyclability and also in using or having a circular economy. Fourthly, India to host ASEAN foreign minister meeting. So this is for the first time that India is hosting such a special meeting with foreign minister of the ASEAN to mark the 30th anniversary of relations with the 10-member grouping. Here is another very interesting question for you, that is it or is it not India is a member of ASEAN? So just give me a yes or no whether India is a member of ASEAN or India is not a member of ASEAN. And also, if you can give me the full form of ASEAN as well. If you'll not be able to answer, I'll definitely cover it up in tomorrow's newspaper analysis for sure. But I now need to need you to answer me that the reasonable restrictions are in which article. Secondly, what is the full form of ASEAN? And thirdly, whether or not India is a member of ASEAN. Let's see what do we have for legal updates. Firstly, there has been a direction by the Allahabad High Court. So Allahabad High Court's direction to constitute family welfare committees to look into 498A complaints violate Supreme Court judgments. So taking guidance from the judgment of the Supreme Court in the case of Social Action Forum for Manav Adhikar versus Union of India, the Allahabad High Court recently directed Constitution of Family Welfare Committee to look into the provisions of Section 498A complaints, which is basically for domestic violence. So the Supreme Court has previously held such guidelines as impermissible. Secondly, receiving proper education is a fundamental right under Article 21A of the Constitution of India, which is basically the right to education, says the Allahabad High Court. So the Allahabad High Court reiterated that receiving proper education is a fundamental right enshrined under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, basically 21A to be more precise. The court further opined that admission grievances ought to be resolved promptly. This was held in the case of Tanishk Srivastava, Lucknow, through Father Ranjeet Kumar Srivastava versus State of UP through Principal Secretary, Primary Education Civil Secretary, Bapu, Bhawan, Lucknow, and others. So this was all for today. We hope you liked the session. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up. Also, you may subscribe to our channel. If you wish to download the PDF of today's slides, you can join a Telegram channel. The link is there in the description box below, or you can simply scan this QR code that you can see on your screens right now. Thank you so much. Have a great day.